A human soldier dodged plasma blasts and napalm flames to rescue a vulnerable alien egg. Not knowing this act of compassion during the brutal human-Hazari war would forever change the course of the conflict and the fate of both species. Yaris downed the last of his Zorbax ale, slamming the glass on the worn table. The dimly lit cantina on Bellis 4 space station was nearly empty at this late hour. Only Yaris and an old Hazari veteran named Zorsek remained, sitting in a dingy corner booth. Zorsek noticed the young warrior's slumped shoulders and distant gaze. "Something eating at you, kid. I haven't seen you this down since your first combat tour." Yaris shook his head. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me. I've seen a lot in my years." Zorsek leaned back, crossing his arms. Yaris sighed. "I recently found out a human saved my life when I was just a hatchling." Zorsek's eyes widened. "A human? That's damn near impossible. We've been at each other's throats for decades. You sure you heard right?" "I'm sure. It was during the battle on Xylox Prime. My egg got separated from the clutch in the chaos. Would have been crushed or frozen if this human soldier hadn't picked me up, carried me to safety and kept me hidden and warm until he could return me to our kind." "I'll be damned. Never thought I'd hear of a human showing that kind of compassion to a Hazari, much less in the middle of a firefight. Got a name for this saint?" "Peter Thomas." Yaris met Zorsek's gaze. "I owe him my life, and now that I know, I need to find him. Repay the debt somehow. But the war's long over, and he could be anywhere in the galaxy by now." Zorsek nodded slowly. "A life debt is a sacred thing. You're honor-bound to see it through. Finding one human among trillions won't be easy, but I know some people, connected people. If anyone can track him down, they can." Yaris straightened, mandibles twitching. "I'll do whatever it takes. Travel to every corner of the universe if I have to. My life won't be my own until I've repaid what I owe." "I understand. We'll get you pointed in the right direction." Zorsek signaled the bartender for another round. "A human putting it all on the line for one of us. Never thought I'd see the day. Changes things, doesn't it?" Zorsek shifted closer, the booth squeaking as he leaned in, eyes glinting with intrigue. "Come to think of it, I reckon I could lend a hand in tracking down this Peter Thomas fella. Got myself some pals over at the Galactic Veterans Association. They keep tabs on old soldiers, both Hazari and human alike. Ain't a sure thing, but they might just have a lead on where to find him." Yaris perked up, mandibles flaring with renewed hope. "Zorsek, you have no idea what that would mean to me. I know it's asking a lot, but I feel in my guts that I gotta do this, not only for myself, but for the future of our kind. If more Hazari caught wind of acts of compassion like this, maybe we could start to see a path to coexisting with humans." Zorsek hummed thoughtfully, nodding his grizzled head. "You know, Yaris, you might be onto something there. Our folk have been locked in this damn war with humans for so long, we've plumb forgotten that they're capable of kindness and empathy too. In fact, your story calls to mind another tale I heard some years back." Yaris edged forward in his seat, eyes wide and eager. "What tale is that?" Zorsek took a long pull from his drink, savoring the burn before speaking again. "This was during the Battle of Karthak Prime. A Hazari squad got themselves pinned down by human forces, supplies running dangerously low. Thought they were goners for sure. But then, quiet as ghosts, a human ship set down near their position in the dead of night. The Hazari hunkered down, ready to go out, guns blazing. But instead of attacking, the humans brought them food, water, medical gear. Even patched up the wounded before melting back into the shadows." Yaris sat back, stunned. "I've never heard tell of humans doing anything of the sort. What in the stars would possess them to aid enemy soldiers?" Zorsek shrugged his broad shoulders. "Hard to say. Could be they were impressed by the Hazari's courage and wanted to show him honor. Or maybe they just couldn't abide seeing anyone suffer, even an enemy. Whatever the reason, it stuck with those soldiers. Never did forget the humans' compassion, even as the bullets kept flying and the war ground on." Yaris shook his head slowly, the revelations upending everything he thought he knew. "Seems we've got a heap to learn about humans. If we could gather more stories like these, it might just shift how our people see 'em." Zorsek met Yaris's eyes, a flicker of hope sparking to life. Worth a shot, I reckon. Let me get in touch with my contacts. See if we can pick up Peter Thomas's trail. Till then, you keep those ears pricked for any more tales of human compassion. Rare as hen's teeth, maybe, but they could be the key we need to unlock a better tomorrow for us all. The dingy cantina seemed a little brighter as Yaris walked in a few days later, spotting Zorsek at their usual booth. The old veteran's face was split in a wide grin, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Yaris, my boy, have I got news for you," Zorsek said, his voice booming across the quiet bar. "My contacts at the GVA came through. They found a record of a Peter Thomas who served in the human military during the Xylox Prime campaign. And get this, he's retired now, living on some small colony world not too far from here." Yaris's heart rate quickened, his mandibles twitching with anticipation. "Are you serious, Zorsek? They actually found him?" He slid into the booth, leaning forward eagerly. "I can't believe it. I never thought I'd actually get the chance to meet him, to thank him for what he did." Zorsek chuckled, holding up a clawed hand. "Easy there, kid. We've still got to figure out how to approach this situation. It's not like you can just show up on his doorstep unannounced and say, 'Hey there, remember me? You saved my egg a few decades back, no big deal.'" Yaris deflated a bit, realizing the complexity of the task ahead. "You're right, of course. I need to find a way to let him know who I am and why I'm coming to see him. But how do I even begin to explain something like that?" Zorsek scratched at his chin thoughtfully. "Well, what about sending him a message first? You could write out your story, explain how you found out about what he did and how much it means to you. That way, he's got time to process it all and decide if he's willing to meet you face to face." Yaris nodded slowly, warming to the idea. "That could work, but Zorsek, I want to do more than just thank him. I want to give him something, a token of my gratitude. But what could I possibly offer a human that would hold any significance?" The old warrior considered for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "You know, from what I understand, humans place a lot of value on personal connections and sentimentality. Maybe you could give him something that represents your culture, something that shows the impact his actions had on you and your people." Yaris's eyes widened, an idea sparking to life. "I've got it. In Hazari tradition, we craft these special medallions for individuals who have shown exceptional bravery or compassion. I could make one for Peter Thomas, inscribe it with the story of how he saved my life." Zorsek grinned, slapping the table approvingly. "Now that's a fine idea, Yaris. A tangible reminder of the bond between you two, even across the void of space and species. I'd wager he'll appreciate that more than any fancy gift or treasure." Yaris felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fire kindling in his chest. "Then it's decided. I'll pour my heart into crafting the perfect medallion, and I'll send him a message expressing what I need to say. With any luck, he'll be willing to meet me, and I can finally look him in the eye and tell him how grateful I am." Zorsek raised his glass, the amber liquid sloshing. "I'll drink to that. To Peter Thomas and to the power of compassion to bridge even the most daunting divides." Yaris clinked his own glass against Zorsek's, a smile spreading across his face. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. Hope for himself, for the future of Hazari human relations, and for the chance to repay a debt that had weighed on his soul for far too long. The neon holosign of the cantina flickered as Yaris drummed his clawed fingers on the table, his eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Zorsek leaned back, sipping his Zorbax ale. "Kid, you need to breathe. You're wound tighter than a Gorthian spring." Yaris exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "I can't help it, Zorsek. It's been weeks since I sent that message to Peter Thomas. What if he's changed his mind? What if he doesn't want anything to do with a Hazari?" Zorsek set his glass down with a thunk. "Now you listen here, Yaris. That human risked his hide to save your egg in the middle of a damn firefight. You think a fella like that's gonna up and forget something like that?" Yaris shook his head, mandibles twitching. "No, I suppose not, but still—" Just then a soft chime emanated from Yaris's wrist. His eyes widened as he tapped the communicator. "Zorsek, it's a message. From him. Zorosek leaned forward, his own eyes gleaming with curiosity. Well, don't keep me in suspense, kid. What's it say? Yaris's voice shook slightly as he read aloud. Dear Yaris, I was deeply touched to receive your message and the beautiful medallion. I remember that day well, and I have often wondered what became of the egg I found. Zorosek nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. See, what did I tell you? Yaris continued, his voice growing stronger. To know that you survived and grew into a brave warrior brings me great joy. I would be honored to meet you in person. I will be passing through your sector next week. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting. The young Hazari looked up, his eyes shining with a mixture of disbelief and elation. Zorosek, he wants to meet me. This is really happening. The old veteran grinned, reaching across to clap Yaris on the shoulder. Damn right it is. This is big, Yaris, not just for you, but for all of us. A Hazari and a human, sitting down together like civilized folk. That's the stuff of legend right there. Yaris nodded, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. I feel like this could be the start of something, Zorosek. If Peter, Thomas and I can find common ground, despite everything our people have been through, maybe there's hope for us after all. Zorosek raised his glass, the amber liquid glinting in the dim light. To new beginnings and unlikely friendships, then. Yaris lifted his own glass, a fierce pride burning in his chest. To Peter Thomas, the human who showed compassion to an enemy, and maybe, just maybe, changed the course of history. As they drank, Yaris felt a thrill of anticipation shiver down his spine. He knew deep in his bones that his meeting with Peter Thomas would be a turning point, not just for him, but for the future of Hazari and humankind alike. And as he sat in that dingy cantina, surrounded by the clink of glasses and the hum of distant starships, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought him to this moment. The day of the meeting arrived at last. Yaris entered the small, unremarkable room on the neutral space station, Zorosek by his side for moral support. They sat in silence, the only sound the hum of the station's life support systems. Yaris's claws tapped a nervous rhythm on his thighs as they waited for Peter Thomas to arrive. After what felt like an eternity, the door slid open with a soft hiss. An aged human man stepped inside, his face lined with wrinkles, his hair a shock of white. But his eyes were warm and kind as they settled on Yaris. Yaris rose to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Peter Thomas? I'm Yaris, the Hazari whose egg you saved all those years ago. A smile spread across Peter's weathered face. Yaris, it's good to finally meet you. I've thought about that day often, wondering what became of you. They sat together, Zorosek listening quietly as Peter and Yaris talked. Peter shared his side of the story, his voice heavy with emotion. I felt such guilt, fighting in a war I didn't believe in. But when I found your egg, alone and vulnerable on that battlefield, something changed in me. I couldn't leave you there. I had to save you, even if it meant defying orders. Yaris felt a lump form in his throat at Peter's words. With shaking hands, he presented the human with the medallion he had crafted. I made this for you, to express my gratitude. Peter accepted the gift, running his fingers over the intricate engravings, but when he looked up, his expression was somber. Yaris, I'm honored by your gift and your gratitude, but there's something you should know. He took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. I'm dying. A rare disease, incurable. I don't have much time left. Yaris felt like he had been punched in the gut. Beside him, Zorosek let out a soft gasp. A friendship, barely begun, now faced an imminent end. But Peter, seeing their distress, smiled sadly. Don't grieve for me, my friends. I've lived a good life. Meeting you, Yaris, and knowing that my actions made a difference, it brings me peace. He reached out, grasping Yaris's hand in his own frail human one. Promise me one thing. Don't let our story end here. Share it with others, Hazari and human alike. Let it be a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, compassion can light the way. Yaris fought back tears, his throat tight with emotion. He nodded solemnly. I promise, Peter, I will carry your legacy, our legacy, forward. Your compassion will not be forgotten. Peter smiled, his eyes shining with contentment. Then my life and this war will have meant something. Thank you, Yaris, for giving an old soldier a reason to hope. As Peter took his leave, Yaris and Zorsek remained seated, lost in contemplative silence. They both knew the road ahead would be long and arduous. Centuries of conflict and prejudice could not be erased in a single day. But they also knew they had been part of something profound, something that transcended the barriers of species and war. A bond of compassion, forged in the unlikeliest of circumstances, with the power to change the course of the galaxy. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.